Hello and welcome to the 9th installment of my Killing Floor 2 perk guide. In this video, we're going to be taking a look at arguably the most satisfying perk to play in Killing Floor, the Demolitionist. Half trash cleaner, half big game hunter. The Demo is a unique perk that has the ability to perform both crowd control and deal with large Zeds in short order with a similar loadout. As the name suggests, the perk relies on the use of explosives as its primary vehicle of destruction. Demos will gain experience from dealing damage with perk weapons, but also from killing flesh pounds, which we will cover later in depth. Passive perk improvements include increased perk weapon damage, resistance to explosive damage, additional explosive ammunition, the ability to supply teammates with one grenade per player per round, door traps, and reactive armor. Door traps are created when welding a door as a demolitionist, indicated by an orange weld mark instead of the typical blue. Once the door's integrity reaches 0, the doors will detonate, dealing 200 explosive damage with a blast radius of 5 meters. In addition to being excellent at killing low-level enemies, it will also inflict a large amount of stumble and knockdown, potentially incapacitating survivors for a brief duration. Reactive armor functions in a similar manner to door traps, but instead detonating once the player's health reaches 0, albeit it has a much less concussive blast. Once triggered, the player will return to 5 HP and the ability will not trigger again until the next round. While this is helpful when being cornered by trash, this will not save you against large enemies unless they are critically wounded. Like many perks, each side of the skill tree will favor a certain playstyle, and the Demolitionist is no exception. The left side will generally favor dealing with tougher enemies first and crowd control second. The right side will generally favor the opposite strategy, with additional ammunition, area of effect, and stumble and knockdown power being the major selling points. As a general rule, most players, especially towards the higher difficulties, will run the entire left side of the tree, particularly towards the latter portions of the game. The reason being is that the Demo still remains effective at dealing with hordes while being extremely efficient against large enemies. On lower difficulties and in solo games, using Shock Trooper in lieu of Bombardier can be worthwhile since the RPG will still retain its one-shot kill ability against Skrakes and Flesh Pounds in most cases. However, I feel that Destroyer of Worlds is one skill that should be taken for most demos, especially when paired with the Seeker 6, as its ability to quickly fire several explosives in rapid succession can shield your team with lethal clouds of radiation. The starting weapon for the Demolitionist is the HX-25, a small 25mm grenade launcher that fires several smaller submunitions that can handle small groups of weaker enemies or quickly take down most medium enemies at close range. While not anything special, it can effectively clear groups of clots on the first few waves before upgrading to more substantial hardware. The Demolitionist has two Tier 2 weapons, the first being C4 explosives, which function in a similar fashion to the pipe bombs from KF1. However, these can be stuck to Zeds and surfaces and are remotely detonated. While it will deal more explosive damage than the RPG, it lacks the additional impact damage that can make the difference between 1 and 2 hit kills. In addition, when stacking several C4 detonations together, each subsequent blast will deal only 75% of its base damage, with a cooldown of 3 seconds that resets with each subsequent C4 detonation. Keep in mind that this damage reduction applies to all explosives, so if you detonate a C4 on a Flesh Pound, then strike him with an RPG, he will only take 75% of the RPG's explosive damage. Remember to expend your rocket first, then detonate C4. The next weapon is the venerable and familiar M79 grenade launcher, a reliable weapon for crowd control and taking down medium-sized Zeds. While it may lack the raw explosive power of the RPG and C4, its plentiful ammo, relative low cost, and quicker reload versus the RPG makes it a good general-purpose weapon for the Demo. Keep in mind that this, along with the M16, M203, and RPG, have a minimum arming distance of 3.87 meters, or roughly 12 feet. This is very important as you will need to keep your space to be effective against hordes, but this can allow you to dispatch single enemies without losing health and armor to explosive damage. The M16, M203 is the first Tier 3 weapon for the Demolitionist, combining an assault rifle comparable to the Bullpup and Stoner with the addition of an underslung grenade launcher. While it fires the same 40mm grenades as the M79 and has a smaller blast radius but equivalent maximum damage. However, the M203 is also reloaded much faster than the M79, giving it a potential leg up against medium Zeds or when used as a last resort against flesh pounds. While this weapon was previously shunned for having too little ammo and lackluster damage, the recent changes in the Christmas update have made it more competitive, especially in solo games when there is no teammates to play linebacker. This update also introduced the Pulverizer as a side perk weapon for the demo, and while it benefits immensely from additional impact damage and explosive damage, the demo's slow movement speed, lack of regenerating health, and slow attack speed make it a hard sell in many cases, although it can be paired with the RPG as a somewhat effective combo during the final wave, especially when Hans or the Patriarch insist on chasing you. Tier 4 features two separate launchers, the first of which, the RPG, deals an incredible amount of explosive damage and impact damage, and is capable of dealing with most large enemies in 1 or 2 rockets depending on difficulty. While flesh pounds are fairly straightforward, taking a large amount of damage from explosives, Skrakes will require a bit more finesse. As mentioned in my Skrake video, a direct headshot from an RPG will kill a Skrake instantly, excluding 6-man, Suicidal, and Hell on Earth games. In those cases, a single shot from a Desert Eagle or 500 Magnum can bring them back within the single RPG headshot spectrum without enraging them. However, the entire left side of the skill tree is required for this. The next weapon, the Seeker 6, offers the same amount of explosive damage per reload divided amongst 6 micro missiles. In addition, the Seeker's alt fire can allow these missiles to lock onto 6 different enemies with a reduced recoil. Not only does this make it very effective at dealing with dispersed hordes, but can also increase accuracy against fast moving enemies, especially bosses moving perpendicular to your line of fire. However, this weapon loses the ability to take down Skrakes in a quick fashion, as the missiles do not have a 4 times impact damage bonus that the RPG does. Still, it is a worthwhile option if the team has a sharpshooter, as well as when playing solo, as the missiles have a slightly shorter arming range compared to the RPG, M79, and M203. The loadouts for the Demolitionist are fairly straightforward thanks to the relative bulk of its weapons. Your standard loadout will consist of either an RPG or Seeker 6 as a primary, and an M79, M16, or C4 as a secondary. For a dedicated big game hunter, the RPG, C4, and 500 Magnum or Desert Eagle make a great trio, allowing you to deal with both Skrakes and flesh pounds very quickly. Your experience with this perk will largely vary based on your team and your individual playstyle, so feel free to experiment with which weapons you like best. However, be cognizant of not only your team composition, but also of what map you're playing on, as more condensed or open maps may favor different weapons. Practice melee bashing as well with the RPG and M79 in particular, as a well-placed bash can quickly kill a lone clot or stun a siren that was hiding around a corner. Also, use jump shots to gain that extra few feet of distance between you and your target, as it can make the difference between a dud and a successful detonation. A support and Demolitionist can make a very deadly combo, especially on maps like Outpost and Biotics Lab, where the ability to create demo traps and fix broken doors can take some of the punch out of a wave and will make your overall game feel less chaotic. As always, thank you very much for watching. Join us next time when we take a look at the Survivalist perk. But until then, happy hunting.